Welcome back to Valuable Rare Coins. If you enjoy hidden treasures, you're in the right spot. First, we're revealing coins that could be worth way more than you think. New here? Like, subscribe, and let's dive in. We're diving into a fascinating piece of American currency, the Liberty 1 cent coin from the year 1971, minted in Denver. That tiny little D below the date holds more meaning than you might think, and by the time we reach the end of this video, you'll know exactly why some versions of this coin are making waves in the coin collecting world. Let's get into at first glance. The 1971 D1 cent coin seems like just another penny. You might have hundreds of them lying in a jar somewhere, maybe in your kitchen drawer, your car, or your childhood piggy bank. But what if I told you that one specific version of this coin, if it meets the right conditions, could be worth a staggering amount of money? But to understand what makes this coin special, we need to look at the story behind it. The year 1971 was an interesting time for the United States. The country was still in the middle of the Vietnam War. The civil rights movement had created lasting change, and the economy was beginning to feel the pressures of inflation. In the middle of all this, the U.S. Mint continued its work, producing billions of coins to support the growing demand of commerce and trade. The penny, or 1 cent coin, had long been a staple of American currency. But the version minted in Denver in 1971, marked by the small d under the date, has caught the attention of collectors for several reasons. First off, let's talk about the design on the front, or obverse side of the coin. You'll find the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. This portrait has been a fixture on the U.S. penny since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. Lincoln's calm, thoughtful expression represents more than just a past president. It symbolizes strength during struggle and hope during times of uncertainty. On the reverse side of the 1971 D penny, we see the Lincoln Memorial, which had been used on the back of the coin since 1959. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny depiction of the Lincoln statue sitting between the columns of the memorial. It's a beautiful detail, one that most people never even notice, but it's there, reminding us that even the smallest coin can carry powerful symbolism. Why is the 1971 D version of this coin so valuable to collectors? Well, it comes down to condition, rarity, and a few fascinating minting quirks. While millions of these coins were minted, most were used, tossed in pockets, dropped on sidewalks, and generally beaten up over time. As a result, finding one in near-perfect, uncirculated condition is incredibly rare. Now here's where things get really interesting. Some 1971 D pennies were struck using dies that had imperfections or misalignments. Others were made with slightly off-center designs, doubling on the date or lettering, or even struck on the wrong type of metal planchet. These so-called error coins are like golden tickets in the numismatic world. They're mistakes, but they're beautiful mistakes that collectors absolutely love. Even without a minting error, if the coin is in pristine, untouched, mint state condition, especially graded MS 67 or higher, it can become significantly more valuable. But if you happen to find a high-grade 1971 D penny with an error, that's where the price tags start turning heads. Collectors are always on the hunt for rare pennies like these because they represent a perfect blend of history, artistry, and rarity. They're more than just coins, they're preserved moments in time. You might be asking yourself right now. Okay, but how much could a single 1971 D Liberty 1 cent coin actually be worth? Well, here's the answer you've been waiting for. If you're lucky enough to own a 1971 D penny in absolutely perfect, uncirculated condition, and it includes a rare error like a doubled die or off-metal strike, its value could reach an astonishing $45,000. Yes, you heard that right. $45,000 for a penny. It's hard to believe, but it's true. That's the kind of story that turns casual hobbyists into passionate collectors. That's why people dig through old jars, flea markets, estate sales, and even childhood collections, because sometimes the right coin can completely change your perspective on value. If you've got a stack of old pennies lying around, It might be time to take a closer look. Check the dates. Look for that little D under 1971. You never know, your next great treasure could be hiding in plain sight. Second rare coin, we're unlocking the story of one of the most intriguing coins in American history, the 1960 United States Liberty 1-cent coin. This unassuming piece of copper might just be hiding in your drawer, your coin jar, or even your pocket change right now. And if it meets the right conditions, its value could absolutely blow your mind. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for, what makes this particular penny so incredibly rare, and how it could be worth a jaw-dropping amount of money. Now, let's turn the clock back to 1960. The United States was in the middle of major change. John F. Kennedy was running for president, the space race was heating up, and American life was shifting into the modern era. But while history books were being rewritten on the world stage, something much smaller and easily overlooked was quietly making its mark in the hands of everyday Americans, the 1960 Lincoln cent, also known as the Liberty 1-cent coin. May not look like much at first. It was made of mostly copper, measured less than an inch in diameter, and carried a value of just 1 cent. But this coin is far more than meets the eye. Let's start with its design. On the front, or obverse side, is the timeless image of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. His portrait had already been on the penny since 1909, commemorating 100 years since Lincoln's birth. It's a design that remains iconic to this day, a symbol of unity, leadership, and resilience. Turn the coin over and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was introduced just a year earlier in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Take a closer look, and you'll even see the tiny statue of Lincoln nestled inside the memorial columns, a detail many miss, but one that adds depth to the artistry of the coin. But what truly sets the 1960 penny apart is what happened during its production. You see, 1960 wasn't just any year for the U.S. Mint. That year saw a fascinating and unusual change in how the date was displayed on the coin. There were two versions produced, the large date and the small date variety. This seemingly minor difference has made all the difference to collectors. The small date version has digits that appear slimmer and closer together, particularly the 6 and 0. The large date version, on the other hand, has bolder, wider numerals that are easier to spot. The Mint released both versions from different facilities, but the real treasure lies in the 1960 small date penny from the Philadelphia Mint, especially if it's in uncirculated condition. Now, let's take it a step further. During this transitional year, a number of double die errors and minting anomalies occurred. These are mistakes made during the striking process, where the coin's design is imprinted twice, slightly off alignment. These rare errors can be spotted in the lettering or the date, creating a noticeable shadow effect that's highly prized among collectors. Combine that with a high-grade condition, say, a coin that has been untouched, perfectly preserved, with original luster, and suddenly you're looking at something far more valuable than spare change. Collectors go absolutely wild for high-grade 1960 pennies, especially the rare small date versions with doubling errors. These coins tell a story of transition, of minor mistakes that turned into major treasures. And while there are many pennies from that year still floating around, only a tiny fraction are in pristine condition. Even fewer carry the telltale signs of a minting anomaly. Why does all of this matter? Because a 1960 Liberty 1-cent coin with the right combination of rarity, error, and condition doesn't just belong in a collection. It belongs in a showcase. It becomes part of numismatic history. And it becomes a coin that people will pay serious money to own. Now you've been patient, and it's finally time for the big reveal. If you happen to come across a 1960 small date Lincoln penny from the Philadelphia Mint, and it's an unbelievably perfect, uncirculated condition, especially with a double die error, the value could soar far beyond what most people expect. That 1-cent coin could be worth as much as $99,000. That's right, $99,000. From one penny. It's stories like these that make coin collecting such an incredible journey. Because while everyone else might overlook that small copper coin, you now know what to look for. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be the next lucky collector to discover a piece of history hiding in plain sight. Third expensive coin, we're talking about the 1968 United States Liberty 1-cent coin, better known as the Lincoln penny. Now, before you brush this off as just a penny, stay with me. Because by the time we finish this video, you'll be looking at every old coin in your house a little differently. Let's rewind time for a moment. The year is 1968. America was going through one of the most turbulent periods in its history. The Vietnam War was intensifying. Protests filled the streets. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated that very year. The country was in the middle of a powerful cultural and political shift, and in the middle of all that chaos, everyday Americans were going about their lives, buying coffee, filling gas tanks, going to the movies, and spending pennies without ever thinking twice about them. But the 1968 Lincoln penny, especially certain rare versions of it, has become something of a quiet legend among coin collectors. And today, we're going to tell you exactly why. First, let's talk about the coin's design. It's one you probably know well. On the front, you have the iconic image of President Abraham Lincoln, a design created by Victor David Brenner all the way back in 1909 to mark the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Lincoln's face on the penny is instantly recognizable, calm, wise, and dignified, a symbol of leadership and strength through hardship. Turn the coin over, and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, which had replaced the wheat ears in 1959. Take a really close look, and you'll even spot the tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside, just like the real memorial in Washington, D.C. It's an incredible level of detail for such a small coin. Now, here's where things start to get really interesting. In 1968, the United States Mint was producing pennies in multiple locations, primarily in Philadelphia, Denver, and for the first time since 1955, San Francisco returned to producing circulating coins. This meant that some 1968 pennies came with a D mint mark for Denver, others came with an S for San Francisco, and those from Philadelphia, had no mint mark at all. Now, most of these coins were mass-produced by the millions, and they circulated through stores, vending machines, and pockets for years. But the real gold mine lies in the details, the condition, the mint mark, and the errors. That's right, error coins are the hidden treasure of the numismatic world. And 1968 had its fair share of them. Some 1968 pennies, particularly from San Francisco, were struck with what's known as a doubled die. This means that the design was imprinted twice during the minting process, just slightly offset. These errors are visible in the letters, the date, or even in Lincoln's profile itself. To the untrained eye, it might look like a slight blur or shadow. But to a collector, that shadow could be worth thousands. But here's the thing. Condition is everything. A coin that has been handled, scratched, or worn over the years might only be worth face value. But a coin that has been kept in mint condition, what experts call MS, 67 or higher, and has a clear, visible error like a doubled die, that's where the story changes. Collectors from around the world hunt for these rare 1968 Liberty 1-cent coins, especially those with the San Francisco mint mark and error varieties. They're not just buying copper, they're buying history. A piece of 1968 frozen in time. A snapshot of a moment when the world was changing and no one knew what the future would hold. And perhaps the most exciting part of all this is that you might already have one. Maybe it's tucked away in a forgotten coin jar. Maybe it's been sitting in a desk drawer since your childhood. Or maybe it was handed to you in change, and you didn't even realize what you were holding. So now you're probably wondering, what could a coin like this actually be worth? Here's your answer. If you happen to own a 1968 Liberty 1-cent coin, especially one from the San Francisco Mint, and it's in pristine, uncirculated condition with a rare doubled die error, it could be worth as much as $70,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. $70,000 for one penny. It's amazing, isn't it? Something so small, something most people wouldn't look at twice, could hold so much value. But that's what makes the world of coins so fascinating. It's not just about the metal, it's about the story, the history, the rarity, and the thrill of the hunt. The next time you come across a handful of change, take a closer look, especially at those old pennies. You never know when you might strike copper and uncover gold. Next coin, we're about to uncover the fascinating story of the 1966 Liberty 1-cent coin from the United States, a coin millions of people have held in their hands without ever realizing how much value it could truly hold. And if you stick around till the end, I'll reveal just how much a rare version of this coin could be worth. Spoiler alert, it's not pocket changed. Let's rewind to 1966. The world was changing rapidly. The Beatles were topping charts, the civil rights movement was transforming the country, and the US was deep into the space race and the Vietnam War. It was a time of revolution, tension, and transformation. While all of that was going on, the US Mint was quietly producing billions of coins to support the growing American economy. Now you might be thinking, so what's so special about a 1966 penny? And honestly, that's a great question. Because on the surface, the 1966 Lincoln cent doesn't look much different from any other penny in your change jar. But the truth is, it's what's beneath the surface that counts. Let's start with the design. Something familiar, yet rich with symbolism. On the obverse side of the coin, we have the profile of President Abraham Lincoln, just like we've seen since 1909. The sculptor, Victor David Brenner, created this image to mark the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. His calm, thoughtful gaze reminds us of strength during division, something that was just as relevant in 1966 as it was 100 years earlier. Turn the coin over and you'll find the Lincoln Memorial. Introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of his birth. And yes, if you look closely, you can actually see a tiny figure of Lincoln sitting in the middle of the memorial. That level of detail on such a small surface? It's no coincidence. It was meant to symbolize the depth of his legacy, etched into even the smallest currency. Now here's where things get really interesting. You see, 1966 was no ordinary year at the US Mint. Due to coin hoarding in previous years and a national coin shortage, the Mint temporarily suspended the use of mint marks from 1965 to 1967. That's right, no pennies in 1966 were marked with a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco. So, if you're searching for a 1966 penny with a mint mark, you can stop right there. It doesn't exist. But this also means that identifying where the coin was minted is part of the mystery, and that mystery is exactly what fascinates collectors. During this era, coins were mass-produced in record numbers to meet demand, and quality control sometimes took a back seat. That's where opportunity knocks for collectors, because along with the standard coins, a handful of error coins slipped through the cracks. Now what do we mean by error coins? These are coins that were struck improperly. Maybe they were off-center, maybe the dies were misaligned, or maybe the date or lettering shows signs of doubling, which means the design was accidentally struck twice. These aren't just mistakes, they're rare and highly valuable anomalies that collectors absolutely love, and when these error coins are found in mint-state condition, untouched by circulation, their value increases dramatically. That's the key. Condition plus rarity equals value. A coin that's been handled, scratched, or exposed to the elements might still be interesting, but it won't fetch a high price. But one that's been preserved in its original mint condition? That's where things get exciting. If you're lucky enough to come across a 1966 Liberty 1-cent coin with a rare error, and it has that shiny, crisp, uncirculated look, almost like it just came out of the mint yesterday. You might want to take a much closer look, because one of those rare and well-preserved 1966 Lincoln pennies, especially those with clear die errors or doubling, has sold for a price that might surprise you. Are you ready? A single 1966 Liberty 1-cent coin in exceptionally high condition and with a rare minting error has been valued at as much as $55,000. Yes, you heard that right. $55,000 for a penny. It's stories like these that remind us why coin collecting is such a thrilling world. It's not just about metal, It's about history, rarity, mystery, and the excitement of discovery. You don't need to be rich to start collecting. Sometimes, all it takes is looking a little closer at what's already in your pocket. So, next time you go through your change or come across an old coin jar, keep an eye out for that 1966 Lincoln penny. You never know, you might be holding a tiny piece of forgotten treasure. Last unique coin, we will take a journey into the story of the 1981 D-Liberty 1-cent coin, a penny that, under the right conditions, could be worth more than a luxury vacation or even a brand new car at first glance. This coin may not seem like anything special. It's a copper-colored penny, minted in 1981 in Denver, marked by the small d just beneath the year. Millions, no, billions of these pennies were struck and sent into circulation. So, why are we talking about this one? Why does the 1981 D penny stand out in a sea of nearly identical coins? Well, like any great mystery, the answers lie in the details. And trust me, these are the kind of details that coin collectors live for. Let's start with the basics. On the obverse side, that's the front of the coin, you'll see the legendary portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Designed by Victor David Brenner, this iconic profile has graced the penny since 1909. It's one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history, and it still stands strong today. It represents unity, resilience, and leadership during one of the country's most challenging periods, the Civil War. Flip it over and you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, complete with the tiny seated figure of Lincoln in the center of the columns. This reverse design was added in 1959, replacing the wheat ears that were featured on earlier pennies. And it remained on the coin until 2008. So yes, the design is familiar. But here's where the plot thickens. The year 1981 was a turning point for the penny, one that most people never noticed. Why? Because it was the last full year the U.S. Mint produced pennies made primarily of copper. That's right. In 1982, due to rising copper prices, the U.S. Mint began transitioning pennies to a copper-plated zinc composition. So, the 1981 D penny represents the end of an era, the final chapter of the true copper penny before things changed forever. That fact alone makes it a special piece of American currency history, but there's more. With billions of coins produced, the minting equipment was running at full capacity, and that's when errors and imperfections started to occur. Some of these errors are barely noticeable, but to an experienced eye, they can be worth their weight in gold, or at least in thousands of dollars. Here are some of the things collectors look for in the 1981 D penny. First, double die errors, where parts of the design, like the date, the lettering, or Lincoln's profile, appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. These are rare, but when found in excellent condition, they can be extremely valuable. Next, we have off-center strikes, where the coin design is not properly aligned, leaving part of the surface blank or the design skewed. Then there are broad strikes, die cracks, repunched mint marks, and other anomalies that only happen in a tiny fraction of coins. But here's the golden rule. Condition is everything. A coin that's been through the ringer, bounced around in pockets, dropped on the ground, handled 1,000 times, might still be interesting, but it won't be worth much. However, if you have a 1981 D-Liberty 1-cent coin that's in mint state condition, meaning it's never been circulated, has its original luster and no signs of wear, that is what collectors are hunting for. Combine that perfect condition with a rare error, and you've got something truly special. So let's say you've got a 1981 D penny. What should you do? Take a good look. Use a magnifying glass. Look for doubling on the letters or the date. Check the edges for off-center strikes or unusual patterns. And if it looks flawless, like it just came off the press yesterday, it might be time to get it professionally graded, because now it's time for the big question. What is it worth? If your 1981 D-Liberty 1-cent coin is in absolutely pristine, uncirculated condition, and it features a rare minting error, such as a double die or off-center strike, its value could climb to an eye-popping $35,000. Yes, you heard that right, $35,000 for a single penny. It's stories like this that make coin collecting so exciting. It's not just about the money, it's about discovering something rare, something unique, something that almost no one else has. A coin that most people overlook could be the very thing that changes your life. The next time you're going through your loose change or rummaging through an old coin jar, take your time. You never know what hidden treasure might be waiting in the bottom of that jar. If you found this video helpful or fascinating, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more rare coin stories, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next one. Every coin has a story, and sometimes that story is worth far more than anyone ever expected. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep collecting, stay curious, and who knows, your next big discovery could be hiding in plain sight.